Do you remember when I described Keir Starmer as being ruthlessly pragmatic or pragmatically ruthless? Keith does. One of my colleagues doesn't. They just said, Nick Thomas-Symonds has just come up with a really good way of describing the Labour Party's approach to Europe. It's going to be ruthlessly pragmatic. I said, oh, yeah, that rings a bell. You ever heard that phrase before? No? Okay. That's why I opened this hour with a beleaguered sigh, albeit one with a rather large smile attached. 7 minutes after 11 is the time. Right, heads up now, or heads down. I don't know the answer to this question. I've told you in the past, I don't know how interesting you find it when I pull back the curtain slightly on what we do together. A bit like Toto in The Wizard of Oz, isn't it? And I actually explain to you what I think the mechanics of our relationship sometimes are. I hope you find it interesting. If you don't, you must let me know, and I'll do it even more. When I really don't know the answer to a question, I have no way of knowing which way our conversation is going to go. Sometimes, I think I mentioned this to you yesterday, sometimes when I truly don't have a clue, I think back in the day I might have pretended not to understand something in the hope of encouraging you to call in, but it often backfires that. So I truly don't have a clue. You've got nothing to bite on. So a strong opinion is often the best way to give you something to bite on. And happily, like most people who do this for a living, I have quite a lot of strong opinions. Oddly, maybe not as many as I used to, or certainly the ones that I do have may not be as strong as I used to. That moment of realisation that there's no point having a mind if you never change it, being a crucial case in point. But if I truly haven't got a clue what the answer is to quite a straightforward question, to quite an outwardly straightforward question, it can go one of two ways. And I still, after all these years doing this job, I still don't know why. I still don't know what it is that determines whether or not the switchboard turns into a sort of Gobi desert of silence, or people queuing up to say largely meaningless and banal things, or when I confess to you that I haven't got a clue what the answer to a question is, it prompts a veritable cornucopia of quality. You queue up to provide plausible, interesting, illuminating, and quite often unexpected answers to the question that I've asked. And I have no knowledge of what makes the difference. I don't know what it is, whether or not I do anything different in those moments. Like on a good day, I get it right and we get scenario 2. And on a bad day, the same question, I just get it wrong somehow, and we get scenario 1. Tumbleweed was the word I was looking for a moment ago. I don't know. And I never will, I don't think. It's the alchemy of the time we spend together, because this is a relationship, right? And there is no objective algorithm for relationships. There is no to-do guide to fix things or to make things perfect. There is no perfect relationship, although I think you and I come pretty close to that on a good day. There is no perfect relationship, which means that some of it is a bit like we talked about why some words are funnier than others. You can do the same joke, but with a slightly different word. Some people are funnier than others. You give the same words to somebody and they will be the funniest thing you've ever heard. And then you give the same words to somebody else and you coach them on how to say them and you won't even raise a titter in a room. Peter Kay, for example, could probably read a shopping list and bring tears of laughter. I had a lovely full disclosure yesterday with John Coulshaw, and we talked a little bit about this. And he, like me, I mean much more than me, just worshipped the ground that the late Les Dawson worked on. Les Dawson, a wonderful example. Somebody who could raise an eyebrow and bring a house down. Whereas often for the rest of us, we can strain desperately to tell what we think is a brilliant joke, but something goes a little bit wrong in the telling and it doesn't even raise a titter, let alone bring the house down. So it's the same sort of alchemy. Now, I ask you a question I don't know the answer to. Some days it propels us into wonderful territory where we learn from and engage with and challenge each other. And other days we ask a question that I don't know the answer to and nobody else does either. And the people who think they do know the answer turn out to be even more boring than the people who don't. So anyway, in for a penny, in for a pound, eh? Here is the question. I've touched on it before. I have some thoughts on it, but I don't think they're going to really fill the whole gap created. So, a couple of stories that I'm reading today, okay? UK and EU should pool defence spending. This is the notion that European countries should coordinate their defence spending in the same way that US states do at the federal level in order to both, I suppose, maximise spending power and therefore create a more meaningful force. This could come up in the Brexit reset negotiations that are likely, the defence deal is likely to be part of them when they kick off on the 19th of May. And there have already been suggestions that this could pave the way to the UK joining a European security programme. We also know that and there are all sorts of different phrases. So we've got a European security programme. Okay, have you got that? Have you written that one down? And now we've got a European reassurance force. So this would involve European boots on the ground in Ukraine. I would say that in the last 24 hours, that has become more likely than ever before. Why? Because the Mango Mussolini has made it pretty clear that he is going to withdraw the United States from their post-war position of prominence, their position as the post-war guarantor in many ways of peace in Europe, and instead throw his lot in with Vladimir Putin. He has become Vladimir Putin's blank. Reminds me, we must do a missing word round shortly. But he has become Vladimir Putin's blank. I think everybody, whether you're dressing it up in fancy words and writing editorials for the Wall Street Journal or whether you're simply posting it on Blue Sky, I think we all know Donald Trump is Vladimir Putin's blank. And that means you need a reassurance force, and it will be European. Then there's a story on the front of the Times, which is a big worry, I would say. Britain is likely to abandon plans to send thousands of troops to protect Ukraine because the risks are deemed too high. One report in one newspaper, but it's a reputable journalist who gets a lot right. In an apparent softening of plans, she writes, Britain and Europe would no longer have a ground force guarding key cities, ports and nuclear power plants. And I mean, here is the madness of the whole situation, that by not doing that, Moscow might actually be more likely to sign up to a peace deal. So by removing the guarantors of a so-called peace deal, Moscow will be more likely to sign up to the peace deal. I mean, come on, Franz Kafka. Even he would probably balk at this as a stretch too far. So what are the terms of the peace deal? Well, we'll have a peacekeeping force in place to ensure that the peace deal succeeds. Yeah, but then we're not going to sign it. All right, how about if we take the peacekeeping force away, Mr. Putin? Then will you sign it? Yeah, that sounds good to me. A peace deal with no peacekeeping. Yeah, great. You carry on, you Western schmucks. It's incredible, right? But all three of these stories, UK and EU should pool defence spending. A European reassurance force for Ukraine becomes more likely. And then contrasting that, risks of sending troops to Ukraine become too high. All speak to a conversation that we last had 10 years ago. And here is where I want you to put your thinking caps on. And here is where I throw the dice and hope that a question to which I don't have an answer is a question to which you have an interesting one. As far as I'm aware, the European Union, in its early days when it wasn't called that, certainly the vision of European Union that Winston Churchill held, saw this European Union, economic union, as the most promising guarantee that Germany and France would never go to war with each other again that humanity could conceive of. So even the most cursory understanding of European history, post-Roman, probably even pre-Roman, but the most cursory understanding of European history teaches you that France and Germany, generally speaking, when at loggerheads, everybody suffers. Okay? Churchill's vision of the European Union, or of a European Union, whatever it became, very much saw the more integration and the more union there is, we're back to getting the eggs out of a baked cake. The more baked the European cake is, the harder it is to get the eggs out. And you have to get the eggs out to start lobbing them at each other. Needs a bit of work, that analogy, but it does the job. And that is why, of all the things, and we probably didn't focus upon this one because there was so much to get cross about or confused about, so many lies that it fell to us to puncture at the time. The lies about the NHS, the lies about immigration, the lies about the car industry, the lies about the fishing industry. Just, I don't know, buy Nigel Farage's autobiography or something if you need a full list of all the lies that were told in the context of leaving the European Union. There were so many that we didn't focus enough on this one. It got shouted down, didn't it, as Project Fear all the time. David Cameron suggested that there would be war on the continent of Europe again if we left the European Project Fear, but there is. And the biggest one for me looking back, the biggest mystery for me looking back, and you must remember this, was that we were supposed to be frightened, opposed to and spooked by a, quotes, European army, end quotes. Why? I haven't perhaps created the warmest of welcomes for people who believe that it would be a terrible thing. But I'd like you to tell me, if you can, if you used to think it would be a terrible thing and can't quite work out why or what led you to such, to me, a strange conclusion. I would really love to talk to you. What were we? So I'm asking half the country what were we supposed to be frightened of, and half the country what they were actually frightened of. What were we supposed to be frightened of when they started banging on about a European army? One of the few things that you didn't have to wait for the future to see the truth of. Even then you could have said, what's wrong with a European army? Listen, I'm no historian, but I'm pretty sure the armies you need to worry about are not the armies that you're in. The armies that you need to worry about are armies full of enemies. The armies that you're in, your armies, are not your problem. And I still don't get it. I still don't know why it was, A, a talking point at all, and B, an apparently effective one. Is it all about the Nazis? Is it all about somehow thinking the Germans are still our enemies and therefore we can't be in the same army as them? That's all I've got. It can't be that, can it? Why was it such an effective nonsense? Of all the Brexit nonsenses, possibly in international relations, one of the most effective. What exactly was that appealing to? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. UK and EU should pool defence spending. Of course they blooming should. I think the idea of not being united in the face of a common threat is absolutely bonkers. Donald Trump is taking his toys home. Donald Trump is abandoning Ukraine, abandoning Europe, demonising Europe, throwing his lot in with Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump is Vladimir Putin's blank. There is no doubt about it. So where does that leave Europe militarily? Up a creek without a paddle. So what do? We start building paddles. And the more paddles we got, the safer we'll be. The more canoes we've got, the safer we'll be, the better it will be. And unity, cooperation, whatever you want to call it, is obviously the answer to both current and future problems. So here it goes. Here's the question I really don't know the answer to. And I hope that you can provide some illumination. Why was or would be a European army be a bad thing? Hit the numbers now. You will get through. All right? 0345 6060 973. I will withhold judgment until the end of the hour on whether it's gone into Category 1 or Category 2. You'll be able to work it out pretty quickly, I imagine, but that is a call to arms for clever people. Why was the prospect of a European army used to scare and spook people in the Brexit debate when it is so obviously, so clearly and so currently a bloody good thing?